All right. Good evening, one and all. Welcome to the first 11 Mile Sessions Live of 2025. I can't believe it. And I'm starting the show off with a bang. In house with me, I have the gentleman known as Christopher Tate. He's from Passenger Recovery. And on our Zoom-like call, we have Nina Heckman from Metropolis Records. Good evening, folks. How are you?
Hi, Scott. How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
All right, this is wonderful. I am so happy to be here. I'm excited. I guess you guys can pick who will get started and start talking about this, the whole thing about the campaign, call to action and that.
Sure. I could take that. So, yeah, my name is Chris Tate, or Tate. People call me by first and last name. It all spends. I've been with a band called Electric Six for about 22 years now. And for 8 years, I have been part of a nonprofit here in Hamtramck / Detroit called Passenger Recovery. Mm-hmm. Passenger is a nonprofit that we started with providing rides and assistance for touring musicians who are coming through Detroit to get to either 12-step meetings or any kind of recovery support group if they were coming through and trying to stay sober. Mm-hmm. But also to just go get coffee, go do laundry, do something to remove themselves from the club for a couple hours. Mm-hmm. That was my background, and it was my experience was playing mid-level gigs. There weren't a lot of options. Sometimes it was really difficult, especially in the Midwest, to try and find support.
You didn't have fancy hotel rooms to crash in between shows?
No, that's not the way we've ever operated. No, we barely had dressing rooms in a lot of places, so anyways, and it's funny, as you mentioned that, I was kind of thinking how this all began, which was being in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, a few years before that, and we had driven 10 hours to get to the club. We got there, and everything was around it was closed because we'd come from Calgary, mm-hmm. and there was no dressing room. So it was like the options were to kind of sit in a freezing van or sit at a bar.
The only thing open is a bar.
Exactly. That it was kind of born of frustration based on that moment, where it was just kind of like there has to be a way that we can do something to try and help people. So, anyways, so that's how we started Passenger Recovery. In 2016, we established as a 501c3. I started telling local promoters that we were available to help people with that, and so flash forward to 2024, I can talk about it into more detail throughout the show, but we opened a recovery community center in Hamtramck last year. So we kind of went from just helping touring musicians and crew people to using music and the arts to help people kind of enrich the lives of people that are interested in recovery in our local community. Mm-hmm. And that we got the support of the MDHHS, which was amazing, but it has been a wild ride, and very much trial by fire for us with trying to figure out how to keep the programming going and how to keep the doors open. Mm-hmm. And so a few months ago, I was having a conversation with Nina, and just about how we could continue to help people and keep things going while keeping everything free to the local community and to touring musicians. Mm-hmm. And so she suggested this Metropolis Call to Action campaign. Mm-hmm. And so, we started it up a couple months ago, and here we are.
Okay, so that runs to the end of this month, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And, of course, you have a connection to Christopher, right, Nina, at Metropolis Records?
Yeah, I've known Christopher since I was like 18 or 19 years old, after my dad signed them. I have seen Electric Six in concert maybe like 27 times, something really dumb. There was one time this is a funny story. 1,000 times. One time I went down to San Francisco to visit my brother who lives down there, and then I actually did not know they were on tour. My brother's like, "Oh, they're playing tomorrow night." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool, we'll go." And I told Tate that backstage, and he was like, "Sure, yeah, okay, you just came down just to see your brother." He did not believe me. He was like, "You came down to see us. I know you did."
We're family.
I am Yeah, I'm a super fan, and they accept my super fandom. Actually, I will tell this story. When before my dad signed them, I was in high school, and I drew a picture of Tate in my sketchbook when I was like 16 or 17, and then when I was like 23, I actually gave it to him. So
True.
they accept me as a super fan, so fangirl. Yeah, yeah.
Not a groupie, but a fangirl.
That's right. There was a distinct difference there. And of
So,
course, I'm a
yeah.
musician, so nothing can be about anybody else. It has to be about me or us. So of course, everybody's coming to see us.
This is
in
true.
any given town and any given night.
So yeah, I've known him for a long time. I mean, they've stayed at our house before, for like at my parents' place. Metropolis, I think we do things differently, and I really pride myself on that. It's a family. Like when I talk to my bands about the rollout, we'll talk numbers, and we'll talk like this is how we have to do a rollout and whatever, and it always ends with like their personal life, and your personal life will affect your music and your career, and how you view the world is going to be how successful you are. So it's like being support to them too. Like sometimes my bands will just call me on the weekend, being like, "What's up? How's it going?" Like it becomes a family, and I really love that about our label.
Yeah, I was telling Christopher before the show started. My impression is you don't stand behind your artists; you stand next to them, hand to hand.
Yeah,
and
I like
the
that.
fact that,
yeah.
And the fact that you support them, and it's not just support them in the sense of, oh, well, we'll set this tour up for you, but like you said, from a personal level, because, nothing is more important than the health and mental well-being of your artist, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like even with drinking or stuff like that, with this campaign, one thing that we haven't mentioned yet is that there will be a compilation that is going to come out in 2025, and all the proceeds will go to Tate's Recovery Center.
Nice.
So we want to use music as a way to help heal the masses. And also, my dad did struggle with alcoholism himself, and just to kind of humanize it, like there's a lot of people in the industry that really looked up to my dad, and they, as human beings, we all struggle. And then I think and sometimes we don't see outside our own struggle. We're like, oh man, like I'm really fucked up and whatever. It's like we're all just trying to get by. And I think by saying, hey, he had a problem too, and it helps other people put their own life under a microscope and see like, oh, I want to change this. Because I have talked to some of my bands that have gone through stuff like this, and just being that we're a support for them and they don't have to feel shame around it, just helps them to be like, okay, I'm going to go get sober, I'm going to change my life. Or it's not just that we're doing this fundraiser, it's that we're trying to make a movement. So when Tate was talking to me about problems with funding, I was like, 100% we want to do this, like especially after my dad passed, like, and honor him and help other people going through this. It really spoke to me personally. So
yeah, I mean, to give an idea like of Metropolis and the Heckmans standing beside us and supporting their artists, when we played, well, first of all, in Philadelphia, I can't count the number of times that the Heckmans showed up to watch us play at Milk Boy, which is like the Philadelphia Lager House.
Okay.
Not a bad place.
Milk Boy, yeah.
But Milk Boy, it's a very small venue, and you see
on top
a band,
of a restaurant. Yeah,
it's above a restaurant. Yeah, you see a band enough times, there are other things that you would rather be doing. That's just and they always showed up, and the Metropolis crew was always there for us. And when we played in San Francisco, we played a festival called the Outlands, like probably 14 years ago, and it was expensive because of whatever was going on to stay in San Francisco that night, and so they.
Expensive in San Francisco?
Yeah, now can you imagine? How the prices go, there are price gouges depending on what's happening in any given town. But it was for us. Anyways, Dave and Gail and Nina, the Heckmans, invited us to stay at their place, and Dave had like this Ocean Rain, Echo and the Bunnymen listening party, and we were all like singing and dancing and, you know, checking out his records, and that's just who he was, you know,
Yeah.
and that's who they are. Is, you know, the band was crashing on their floor, and it just, you know, we've been very fortunate to be with Metropolis as long as we have.
So he was more like your uncle than your label head.
Yeah.
With,
I mean, yeah, in many ways. You know, I kind of love telling this story. At every turn, if I had a side project, I would fire demos off to Dave, and he was never interested, but. but ever. But the awesome part, and I totally understand that, and I respected it. But he took the time to tell me, "I'm not interested. This is why I'm not interested. This is what I didn't like about it." Instead of what you usually get is, you know, thanks for playing, or no response at all. 99% of the time, it's no response at all. He took the time to say, "This is why I'm not interested in this. This is why this isn't a good fit for Metropolis." And we were close enough that I could give him a hard time about that, or try and, you know. But it was very, you know, that speaks volumes, you know, because I used to send him crap all the time, and he would respond, you know, with criticisms, which, you know, for a young-ish artist back in those times,
yeah.
it meant a lot, you know. And he's the head of the label, you know, and he's taking the time to say, "This is why I'm not interested in this."
Well, that's how they did it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nina.
We try to respond to all to people who send us music. I try to at least respond, and I actually get thank you letters for rejection letters because they are so used to not getting a response at all.
Yeah.
Just simple politeness, consideration for someone as a human being, you know?
Yeah.
Thank you for your submission. And like Christopher said, it's like, this is why we don't think we can fit it into Metropolis. But, you know, you may try somewhere else, you know, where it's a better fit.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. And none of the stuff I ever sent was really deserving or made any sense, but I would send it anyways. And
I wasn't going to say anything, but...
but, you know, several times over the course of not just my recovery, but since we got Passenger going, Nina and I have had conversations, not just about how I was doing, but if she had another artist that was looking for a certain type of help. And that too, I mean, that's moving to me, because we exist in a world where not only are drugs and alcohol encouraged, I mean, I think that's changing a little bit, but the reality of the music industry for the past several decades is it's part of the entire the culture,
the whole mystique.
Yeah. And so
sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And you know, the reality is if you're not making money, you're not going to be on a label for long. And it is a business, and it is an industry. But for the people who run the label to be reaching out to other people on behalf of their artists, to me, says a lot. And it's, you know, it only reinforces why I love the label in the first place.
That's why you're still going strong after what? Well, over 30 years now? Nina?
Oh, 30? Oh, yeah. I thought you were talking to Electric Six.
That's
yeah,
okay.
30 years,
Just about.
Not quite for them, but yeah, 30 years. 1994, I think, was the first release. It was, I know this. Is it like Love is Colder Than Death or something? I would have to check. But yeah.
Yeah, so a solid 30 years, because it's 2025 now. So they came in for the second 2/3, second of God knows how many, the rate you're going.
Yeah, that was a funny mix-up because, yes, we have...
Early 2000s. Yeah.
Yeah,
Their first album was on another label, and then we have the rest of their stuff. So, yeah.
Second, so I think, so right around 2004.
Okay, all right.
2 decades.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I hope Christopher doesn't mind me saying this, but they're still a big deal here in Detroit, but they're much bigger everywhere else. You know, I think.
Oh, E6?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's, you know, it's there was a much different level of promotion overseas because of the first record, and on top of that, it's just, you know, our singer Dick/Tyler has a very specific brand of humor, and some people really gravitate towards, and some people do not.
Don't get it.
And for whatever reason, it stuck in certain places. And the UK was kind of the spearhead. Like, that was where it really landed.
So it's
to
more
begin
dry, sarcastic kind of thing, or
I mean,
or is it just very eccentric, like Monty Python or something?
yeah, it's like, somewhere between game show host and used car salesman.
Okay, I get.
But
I could
but
see
yeah,
Dick Valentine as a used car salesman for sure.
yeah, or a game show
Yeah.
host. He should have had his own game show. Actually, now that we're talking about this,
It's like Wink Martindale in a band, huh?
yeah, yeah. I mean,
He still has time.
yeah, that's true. That's true. I would love to see him be like the next Mean Gene in the WWF or something. I think he'd be dynamite as that too, like the announcer for Major Wrestling, World Wrestling.
Okay. I got you.
He'd handle that very well. But yeah, it is. It's very. It is funny. It's very angular, and also not just like in different geographic markets for us. Some places it really resonated. Some places it not so much. But post pandemic, we have really had kind of a second time to shine because the band is inherently a little. It rocks. It's good. It's good rock and roll music, but it's pretty goofy too. And coming out of the pandemic, I mean, people just wanted to have a good time. And
Wanted a little sense of humor thrown in there.
you're right. And whether people love us or hate us, I guarantee you'll have a good time at the show. So
Yeah. Okay. So, I see. What was I going to ask? Let's talk more about this. Actually, I would like to ask you about your father. I mean, you said you might have a couple of stories, like humorous or something that people would want to hear about. Well, like
no pressure.
no pressure. Well, we don't want to talk.
I mean, he liked leather pants and anchovies on pizza. And
No, I guess what I can ask you is where was his head at, and what was he thinking when he started Metropolis? Where did that come from? If you know.
I mean, I was like 5 or something, but
I just figured maybe he recounted to you later on.
Yeah, I can tell you the story of like how it started. So originally there was a record store called Digital Underground that my parents started together. Actually, my mom took a severance package from her job so that she could open up the store. So it was actually in her name so that my dad could build the record label out of it. It's called Digital Underground. I have it tattooed on the logo on my arm. I got it tattooed shortly after my dad's death as a memorial for him.
Was that in Philly?
I got the tattoo. Yes, this was it was right off of South Street. The record
The
store.
record store. Okay. I'm hearing this for the first time too. So I was just curious because
it still exists. And I actually last time I was in Philadelphia, I saw it was at a different location. And in order to make a record store still be successful this day, it also has to be a gaming store and all this other stuff. So yeah, the owner saw my tattoo. He's like, "I like your tattoo," and I'm like, so since it got bought out twice since. So it's still alive, just not owned by our family anymore. So then, and that might have started 2 years earlier, like in 1992 or maybe 91. So then he started the record label, and then that grew, and then they had a warehouse outside of Philadelphia, and it originally started with goth industrial music only, and we've kind of branched out a little bit. I mean, like Electric Six is an anomaly on our label. We have nothing else like Electric Six.
And Christopher.
Tate likes to call the Electric Six like the ugly redhead stepchild. But somehow we accepted each other, and it's been a great relationship. But we have branched out a little bit. We do have some indie rock. We do have shoegazer. We tend to focus more on dark stuff. So even if you are an indie rock, it has to have kind of a darker post-punk feel that works more with our genre. Yeah. So, that's kind of how it started. Yeah.
Okay.
We are certainly an I guess an oddball, slightly outside the typical Metropolis universe, but the fact that we have been there for 20 years is a testament. Like they're there's definitely the goth industrial, I suppose, like the specific like market that is their their universe or their core. But I mean, they took a chance on us 20 years ago, and we're still working together. So
Just caught him at the right place, the right time.
I
and
guess
just, it helped to have a super fan, though, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching their video for the first time. It was Gay Bar with my dad, and he had seen it for the first time too. We watched it together. Like, it was not MTV because MTV wasn't playing music then. It was some other TV show. But we were both like, "What?" Both our mouths dropped, and we were like laughing our asses off. It was so like I did see it for the first time with my dad. So, we're like,
That'd be
who
really
are
cool.
these people? What? What?
No, I said that had to be really cool growing up with your dad and being exposed to all that. Not to mention all the bands that you've met over the years.
Yeah, meet some eccentric people for sure, artist type. So, yeah, definitely got exposed to different things. So,
Okay. All right. Why don't we get back to let's talk more about Call to Action, and the whole campaign and everything that's going on.
Yeah. Well, we're a few months in now. We're about halfway to the goal, which is $10,000. Metropolis has agreed to match anything up to $10,000. There are a few kind of packages that like some friends in the industry have contributed to kind of incentivize people to donate. But also, as Nina mentioned, eventually there's going to be a compilation coming next year that will tie in with it.
Or this year now. It's 20.
This year, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm still in 2024.
Yeah, no, I forgive you. I'm doing the same thing
Yeah.
like everybody else. Yeah. So who can we look forward to seeing on that, or you haven't figured that out yet? The compilation, Nina?
yeah, we have a few people that have already submitted and people that are interested. So, like Combi Christ is interested. He said he would submit, hasn't yet. We have. I'll start with the ones who have submitted. So there, Assemblage 23 has submitted. Gen Cab, Caustic. There might be some that that have not gone through me, but have probably gone through my label manager. But Combi Christ said they would. System Sin. There might be something from VNV Nation. So we're still kind of compiling that and putting it together. I know Electric Six is doing a remix song too. So we've done other charity compilations before. This is kind of based off of what we did with Jim Simonic from what is his label? Well, he has a label out of Pittsburgh, and we do Electronic Saviors. So he had cancer and he survived, and he wanted to, so he spent the rest of his life kind of raising money for cancer research. And so he reached out to my dad, or Jim, our label manager, years back, and was like, "Hey, do you think Dave Hackman would be into this?" And as soon as my dad heard it, he's like, "Yeah, I want to do this." Like, so people then it's a pretty big. We're not going to be doing it as big as Jim Simonic, though. It's like it is a 4-disc box set, and they're into being like 60 songs or something. So I think ours might be like 20 different. So I think Jim Simonic is going to be submitting some songs from his label. And then also we're working with Cop Records. He's a good friend of ours. When I lived in the Bay Area, he was friends with my dad. I've done interviews with him and panels, and he's just really supportive. We call, between our 3 labels, we call ourselves the Northwest Label Alliance, because they're actually like people in the industry that like I can go to as my friends and be like, I'm dealing with X, Y, and Z, and they will actually give me like real advice, where like there's other people in the industry that like, oh, you should, like, they're just giving you bad advice because you're competition. They're like, oh, you should do this, and now that Dave's out of the picture, let me give you bad advice. And I'm like, that's great, please leave me alone. But so like it's nice. So I say this a lot. I believe that all ships rise with high tide, and so it's nice to have, like, why be in competition when we can work together? So the same with Electronic Saviors. Electronic Saviors will come out before the compilation that we're doing for my dad. So we don't really want to compete. But that's coming out this year. And again, we're working with Cop Records too, so we're all promoting it. Just to kind of, and so we tend to work together on these like nonprofit type things. And it's just kind of a fun thing for us as friends to do.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to universal, you can't get more universal than cancer or addiction, because that doesn't, there's no bias, there's no, what am I saying, discrimination or anything.
Right.
It can attack anybody on the planet, you know, no matter what. So
and I feel also for addiction, especially in this industry, because like you said earlier, it's part of the culture, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Like it's cool. It's, you know, and the stresses of being on tour. Like everyone thinks it's exotic and you get to be all over the world, but really you spend like you get to town, you set up, and then you spend like a couple hours on the worst block in the whole entire city, and you have to rush to get food, and like you never actually see the sights. And for me, that sounds really stressful, you know, like, so, and that you always have to be on, you're always in front of your fans and being on and being social. And for some people, like drinking or doing drugs just takes that edge off. I'm like, okay, now I can do this now, or, you know, I need uppers to go on stage and downers to sleep, and just so that I can function. And so it can be a very slippery slope, and always having to like work at a bar, you know, like, so it's actually like common courtesy to buy someone a drink. That's being polite, you know? So you know, like that's where I do business. Sometimes I go to a show and we talk and stuff, and like, so it's like, oh, I'll buy you a drink or whatever, and that's supposed to be nice, but it's enabling for some people.
Yeah, and if you go to a better place, of course, what do they have? The green room, right? Yeah, well, now that you're done playing, you know, let's party.
Right.
That's the first thing that comes to mind, right?
Yeah, and that was one of the first things actually that we. So I'll give a brief history on Passenger. You know, we started in 2016, giving people rides and transportation to support groups, and we had like a clean green room was kind of part of the original options. It was one of the options that we would provide for people. So whether it was for a while they were staying at my house in Hamtramck, or we had a little studio in one corner of the house. People could go there rather than being in the green room at the gig. Typically, unless you are playing a larger venue, a green room is a pretty small space, and if you are in there with people who are partying, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah,
and so we started just offering that to people, and a lot of the lower level to dive bar venues are in Hamtramck. Well, I mean, I've lived behind the library there for 8 years, so it made sense.
Well, at one time, didn't they say they had the most bars per square mile?
Yeah.
Any place in North America?
Yeah. There are loads of blind pigs and speakeasies and everything early on. Because it's an immigrant city from its very start. You know, it was a lot of Polish immigrants coming to work for the auto industry. Hard work and hard drinking. But throughout that, it has also established this wild music history. And so that's where I guess the dive bars and the Lilies and the Paychecks all come into play, which are local gigs that are no longer with us.
Yeah.
Nina.
Lily was a sweetheart. She was something else, wasn't she?
Yeah, and it's just got such a history. Yes, she was amazing, and it's a different bar now. There's just like generations of places that used to be other things. You know, the Motor Lounge. Before that, it was the Falcon Club. So you know, when it was a Motor Lounge, it put, you know, Basement Jacks played there. They got their start and some of the techno guys, Carl Craig, at least, that was part of their cornerstone, their foundation to get going. Before that, people like Carl Perkins were playing there and Jack Scott. And so it's like these venues would stay but change themes. But I mean, the universal theme, of course, was everybody was drinking, because it just kind of went hand in hand with being in Hamtramck for a very long time. But it's interesting. So the first actual big event that we did was in 2017. Lowell Tolhurst from The Cure put out a book about his sobriety, and we managed to get him to come to Hamtramck and talk about the book. And it was interesting. The reason I'm bringing that up is because we were just talking about how, like, bands kind of in that are on the dive bar circuit, they're hanging by a thread. But to speak to the opposite end of that and how powerful addiction and drug and alcohol use can be, his time in The Cure ended right before disintegration. So they put out Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me. He was warned many times. He talks about it in the book, about being thrown, and they could not have gotten bigger than disintegration. I remember them being essentially like a very indie new wave band that they had billboards in the 12 Oaks Mall when I was a kid.
Yeah.
That didn't happen in the late 80s, early 90s until other than them and Depeche Mode. Like, they were really. So anyway, all I'm saying is he sacrificed everything for his disease.
Yeah.
Even at the very peak of that band, it wasn't enough to get him to consider a different way of life. And that's just it's the power of addiction as a disease. I heard somebody say a couple weeks ago, sick, not bad, well, not good. So sick versus well, versus bad instead of good. Like, sick and well, I think, is a much better way to put it, because I don't think anybody is inherently bad. They certainly can be good, but when it comes to this disease, they're being influenced or controlled or paralyzed by their addiction.
Well, I've always told people, it's like all bets are off. The kindest, gentlest, most moralistic person can turn into the opposite once addiction grabs a hold of them hard enough. I mean, you get to a point where, not everybody, of course, but where you would, you steal from your own mother if that's what you need for that next fix or that next whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking about earlier, it's the solution until it becomes the problem. But once it becomes the problem, for me, it was it trumped everything. And and the flip side of that is, I believe that big changes can happen with little beginnings and slight starts. And so if we can give somebody someplace to escape when they're on the road for a couple hours, or Nina can plug them in with resources around the country to be able to see that there are other options out there. I mean, when I went to treatment the third time, so the time, knock on wood, that the last time I went to treatment, I was put in touch with an organization called Music Cares, and they're a national organization, and they have all kinds of mental health resources. But one of the things they help do right now, they have a relief fund for musicians and artists who are dealing with the fires in Los Angeles.
Okay. So
they were big organization tied to the Grammys, but they help the little people get into treatment. And they helped me get into treatment when I had nothing. But I not heard about them through a friend in Minneapolis via a friend from Dallas. It was like slingshotted across the country, like, hey, you need to get in touch with so-and-so. He's got the information. Hey, you need to get in touch with Music Cares. Talk to this lady. I don't know if I ever would have made it to treatment. I also believe that we have a specific window where we're willing to accept help. And the right people were there. And so it's our job, or it's our commitment, our goal is to, our passion, our job, our goal is with Metropolis and also with Passenger, is to try and bring awareness to things that people. I'm so deep into the mental health and music world that I sometimes forget that a lot of this information isn't everywhere, and so it's it's important to get it out there, and to keep getting it out there and let people know that there are options for them to make a change in life. doesn't have to be sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Anything that ruins your life, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just wanted to bring up. I know you mentioned it earlier. I think if I'm not mistaken, I saw somebody offered some kind of Kiss memorabilia or whatever for that
Yes.
for call to action.
Yep. So that
That's just one example.
along with the Metropolis campaign, which will, again, I need to reinforce this. They will match contributions, which is amazing, through the end of January. Some people have come forward and donated some things to incentivize people to consider donating. So a friend who worked as Kiss's business manager for a very long time has he brought forward a signed Gene Simmons cork guitar along with Kiss Tree 1 and 2 and a signed Kiss and Makeup autobiography. Thank you to Angus who helped us with that.
Yeah.
And Mike Alonso, who was in Electric Six for a very long time, who's now with Flogging Molly, contributed a very exclusive Flogging Molly skateboard along with a signed drum head and some Flogging Molly guitar picks.
Nice. Everybody's come together. All these musicians and labels and
Yeah.
I
mean, like you said, it affects everyone. Everyone has it doesn't discriminate, and so whether it's a friend, a family member, but especially as Nina said, in this industry where sometimes it can either be encouraged, drug and alcohol use, or it is a coping mechanism or lubricant to get to the next place or to get to the next tour.
And like you said,
it affects everyone.
It affects everyone. I mean, the Rolling Stones is a perfect example. I mean, how do you get much bigger than the Rolling Stones and their history with as far as addiction, over the years? I actually heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but I was told that Ron Wood actually has to sign a contract stating that he has to stay sober during the tour. Otherwise, he's not allowed to do the tours with them.
Okay. I
don't know if that's true in 25, but I know at one time he couldn't stay sober long enough to play, and they said, look, you either have to be sober or you're not with us. Pick one or the other. We don't care.
Right.
And
Choose
Mick
wisely.
And Mick and Keith could pick anybody they want.
Of course.
They can afford anybody they want.
Right.
But yeah, that's the high. That's the other side that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. I mean, it affects people on every level. I think, for me, definitely. I mean, I guess we experienced to a certain extent as a band. E6 has experienced that a few different levels of success. Meaning, at the beginning in summer 2002, we were playing like the old Miami in the Lager House, and 6 months later we were mixing the first record at Abbey Road.
Yeah.
And I always go back to that as an example because it's like if somebody can see potential, they're not typically going to wait around. I can send 1,000 demos in, and people will say, well, we'll think about it. But if they can see something they're going to make money on, and for us, it happened where a few things happened where, like, Jack White was on one of the songs on the first record, and Too Many DJs, that was a UK collective, DJ collective, started mixing a song with a Cramp song on the mashup record that they put out. And these things came together very quickly, but they saw the potential for these. They knew their markets, and they knew that there were a couple songs on that first record that would be very successful in the UK. And so when all that came together, so I guess all that is just to say that very quickly we experienced a lot of different levels of music industry success, and then the other side of that, where we became what we probably always deserved to be, which is like a cult band that has thankfully people that still believe in us, and Metropolis, and a group of and a pretty wild fan base, so that we're able to still tour. But I don't know that any of that rise or descent helped my inclination for drugs and alcohol.
Well, I would guess that no matter what level you were at, you were still struggling about the same amount, right? As far as your addiction?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I always say this, I would love to pin my addictions on rock and roll, but I was drinking every day long before I was touring every day.
Yeah.
But then when the dynamic of the band kind of went upwards, and then it would it was kind of like on
Roller
decline
coaster
after that
kinda.
first year. I certainly was using to try and perpetuate where I thought I was at, where my ego was telling me I was at, versus where the band really was at, as with regards to success, which was not a bad place to be, anyways.
No.
It was. We've been very, very fortunate every step of the way, but yeah, I mean that was. So it didn't do anything to help my my drug or alcohol intake, and as it was mentioned before, I think it's just it's part of the culture. So it's it's not only welcome, it's encouraged a lot of times. So
You're not cool until you're a party animal.
sometimes.
Yeah, in some cases. All right, so
yeah, with the music business comes a party. Like that's people want to flock to you for the party.
yeah, that's for sure. All right, so where can people go to for anything they want to contribute, they want to find out more for both Metropolis and Passenger Recovery? If you want to tell our viewers, listeners, like every.
So you can go to Patriosity/Metropolis call to action, and donate if you can donate. Read our mission statement if you can't donate. Share if you can't donate. It's it's about getting the word out. And then I think Tate has more resources for people.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, in between, it's like people don't realize that you have to remind them all the time. Even if you can't contribute, sharing is so easy to do nowadays. All you do is any post, anything, just share it. That still makes a difference. The
Right.
more bodies that see it, hear it, know what's going on, right?
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when we first released it, Nina put that up, and it really kind of got my attention. I am not a social media whiz. I'm not a PR person, but it's the truth. Like, we would love for you to contribute if you believe in this mission, but also, as was mentioned, a rising tide. Like if you can share it with other people who have the means or have the interest, that's just as powerful.
Oh yeah.
Every like, every share. And yeah, so for anyone who's in Detroit or Southeast Michigan area, if you go to passengerrecovery.com, you will see events that we do. We do 8 support groups a week in Hamtramck. We have many different types of groups. We have 12-step groups. We have sex and love addiction groups. We have smart recovery groups, which is rational emotive behavioral therapy. So anybody who's not interested in the spiritual component, can sit with the group and talk about just better decision making, which is.
That's very good, because I know I've met a lot of people over my lifetime that they're turned off about the whole religious aspect of trying to recover.
Sure. Yeah.
Especially with AA.
I think that was
Go ahead.
that was
Nina.
a big component for my dad. He did go to a couple AA, and he just couldn't get past the God. He was just like, nope.
He hated it.
Yeah.
Didn't he?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think everybody, it's not a one size fits all for sure. Everybody comes with, and that's kind of the thing with, that's where we tie in music and the arts with recovery. It's like there is no one way forward. Just like anybody who's a musician or an artist, everybody comes to the table with a different set of struggles, and that's what inspires them to create. Well, everybody in recovery comes with a different set of variables that either influence their addiction or can direct the recovery. And so that's our goal in Hamtramck, is to try and give as many options as possible.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, so there are multiple different types of groups. We have a virtual group on Tuesdays for touring musicians. I kind of still continue with our original mission, but we also do create all kinds of music and arts events for people in the local community. So like I said, it's kind of pivoted to using music and the arts for people who are interested in a change that in the local recovery community, along with helping touring musicians. So we do creative writing with Jimmy Doom, who's a local, I'm sure, I know you know Jimmy.
Yes.
Everybody does.
Yep. If you don't know him, then you've been sleeping under a rock.
Right. We do. Yeah. And we do open mic nights. We do creative writing. A lot of it is These are things that you can do to exercise demons, or to work things out as a release to improve kind of your well-being. There are things that you can do in recovery. They're also just things you can do as somebody who doesn't want to be in a bar or who wants to try and make a change, that's looking for some kind of enrichment.
Yeah, something positive to focus on. And I'd like to say an analogy that I've thought of. It's like it doesn't matter how you get there as long as you end up there ultimately in the end. So like if you're traveling, whether you take the bus, you take the train, you take the plane, you walk,
Right.
you hike, as long as the goal is to eventually get to that point B, that's what it takes, right? Whatever helps.
Right.
That's what you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that's what we do for our local community, but we're still very much plugged into assisting touring musicians and crew folks and music workers as well. So if anybody's interested in finding out more about us, you can either email us at passengerrecovery@gmail.com. We'd be happy to discuss the campaign or any of the packages. And if you go to passengerrecovery.com, you can find out more about our organization as well.
Okay. Well, this has been a great pleasure. I think we'll finish there, but I just want to remind everybody call to action that's going through January 31st, correct?
Yep, Metropolis Records, a call to action, and you can find the campaign on patronicity.com.
Okay, and Metropolis will match up to 10,000. And I'd like to shout out to anybody that sees this show either live as it happens or, between now and January 31st. I'm not bragging, but if every musician that ever has met me and knows who the heck I am, if they even gave $1, I think we'd be to $10,000 in no time flat.
Come on, Scott's friends.
I mean, just the people for Corktown Music Fest would probably cover that tab. So yeah. Well, it has been a very very great pleasure to meet you, Nina. I hope we can talk again in the future. Hopefully about similar things, and continued success not only with Metropolis Records but everything that both of you are doing. And I'm hoping I can be a part of it too. We'll talk more about that. That's coming up in April. So. All right. Once again, Nina Heckman from Metropolis Records, Christopher Tate from Passenger Recovery. I thank you both for spending time with us. It's a wonderful cause. I highly recommend it. Hopefully we can get the word out.
Thanks for your time, Scott. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Have a good one. Good evening.
Good night. Thanks, Nina.
Thanks, Nina. I
Sure,
really
thanks.
appreciate it.
Oh, would you like to be on our DJ pool list?
Yes.
Are you part of? Okay, I'll put you on our. We send it out every 2 weeks. You'll get Bandcamp codes to all our stuff.
That is amazing. That is awesome. Not just here, but
I've lost sound.